Hello there, postpartum moms. This is Samantha again. I'm here to discuss my postpartum and depression story and my journey with you. Sorry, it's been a few months. I have been really busy. My kids are homeschooled. I am a mom of six, and my 5 and 6 are twins. So you can imagine I'm very busy, and it's very hard for me to get a video in. But I wanted to start this series, which is going to be a 3-part series of videos where I want to discuss the initial symptoms, the middle stages where I had the most severe symptoms, and then the recovery in the third video. So this first video is just going to be a rundown on what things made my postpartum a lot more different, my postpartum experience a lot more different, and a lot more worse than my previous pregnancies, because I know a lot of you can relate to the birth and delivery of your baby, which played a role in your postpartum depression. So I just want to begin by saying that in each of these videos, I'm going to be discussing a lot of topics that can trigger some intrusive thoughts for some moms that are going through postpartum right now, that are in this season. So I just want to give a warning and a caution to those moms who are not able to hear that kind of stuff right now, because I know I wasn't in that season where I can hear certain things because it made my symptoms worse. So I want to be able to give a forewarning and say, if you're in that season right now where you're not able to hear these types of things or discuss these types of topics, then just give it some time and come back to the video when you're ready. And for those moms who do want to hear this, I am going to be very open and honest with everything that I went through, because I feel like this is an important topic to discuss, where we don't hide from what situations we have been through with postpartum, because there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes along with postpartum depression. So I really, really want to be honest through this channel, and I want to showcase what the real feelings are for those moms that go there, so that caregivers and spouses can see and know and understand the signs of postpartum depression and anxiety. So I just want to start with saying that an intro about myself. I have 6 children. I have had babies back to back since I was 23. I am 33 now. And during those in between periods of not having babies, I was nursing, and then I would end up pregnant. So I've had my experience and my fair share of experience with postpartum, but nothing as bad as this last year. So I already had 4 babies by the year 2021, and I ended up pregnant with twins in May 2021, which was a total surprise and total shocker. It was not planned. We were already done having kids. We had 2 boys and 2 girls, so we were good. And then it turns out that I was pregnant again. And on top of being pregnant again, it's identical twin baby girls, which was such a surprise, and it's such a beautiful, shocking experience. But I was warned from the get-go that having twins comes with a lot of complications, and it can bring on a lot of scary symptoms versus having a singleton baby. So in my mind, I kind of wasn't prepared to expect the things that I was going to go through with having twins, and I did the best that I could to prepare myself. I ate as well as I could. I bought books to try to keep me on track with what I should be eating and how much water I should be drinking and how much rest I should be getting. But being a mom of 4 and homeschooling, it was very hard for me to get those periods of rest, which in turn probably did not help, because my babies ended up coming at 31 weeks, which was something I was adamant about avoiding. I really, really was trying to keep them in so that they would not have to be in the NICU. I ended up going into the hospital at 31 weeks pregnant due to high blood pressure. And as I was in there for high blood pressure, and as they did ultrasounds for the twin baby girls, which they were identical. So when you have identical twins, they can either be in separate sacs or in the same sac, but they will be sharing the same placenta. What ended up happening is that one twin was much smaller than the other twin. Twin B was 2.2 and twin A was 3.9. And on top of that, twin B, which was severely small, she was also severely malnourished and also anemic. So I ended up giving birth to my twins and coming to find out that they had twin to twin transfusion, which is where one twin is receiving the most nutrients and not gaining weight and giving all her blood and nutrients to sister. Had they been in there longer, I don't think that their chances of survival would have been great. So it was a miracle that they came at the time that they did, and doctors did not catch it. So the whole process was very, very traumatic and unexpected. I had emergency surgery, C-section. Babies were whisked away to another hospital. I only got to see them for 5 minutes. Which was not common for me. I was used to being able to be with my babies after birth. I was used to nursing them immediately after. This time I had a pump. This time I had to be away from them. And on top of that, my blood pressure was not stable. So as you can imagine, I had all this trauma that I didn't realize I was going through at the time. Because for a mom, the most natural thing is to be next to your babies. And it was so unnatural for me not to be near them and for them to be far away from me. And within those next 2 weeks, I had to be on strict bed rest because my blood pressure would not stabilize. And every time I would get up and move, it would shoot back up. So there was so much guilt not being able to be there in the NICU with my babies, which also added to a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress that I had to deal with. And as soon as I was able and my blood pressure was stabilized, I was up and ready to go and see my babies. I was there every day, back and forth between home with my kiddos and then going back with the babies. And it was just ongoing, even while still recuperating from a C-section. And on top of that, I also had an infection in my C-section incision, which was also traumatic. So the whole thing was just a blur. And looking back, you remember bits and pieces, but it's all just been a blur. And the babies ended up coming home at 2 months, and it was a long journey, a long process. But once they were home, I felt a little more settled, and I felt like, okay, now I can get back into my routine, and now, I have them here, so I won't be driving back and forth. The only problem was that my husband did have to go back to work. And my husband worked at nights, and my mom and dad also worked. So I didn't have much family support, and I didn't ask for much family support because I knew everybody's schedules were hectic and busy. So during that time, I just remember doing everything by myself. I was still homeschooling. I had baby twins that I'm pumping for because I tried nursing and they were just not taking it. They were not getting full. So I had to do bottles in the middle of the night. I had to prepare the bottles before bed and just have bottles ready and heat them up in the middle of the night. I had a system going where I would try to keep them on the same schedule. But you're just barely surviving during that period, especially with twins. Not having help, especially at night, was really hard. But I did not see that in hindsight. And I think a lot of moms would probably agree with me that when you're going through that postpartum, like those first 3 or 4 months, and you have the baby home with you, you're kind of in this blur where you don't really, you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to get through the day. You're barely eating. You're everything is about the baby and everything is about your kids, and you're trying to just feed everybody, and you're not really taking care of yourself. So I didn't see that in hindsight. I didn't see that I wasn't getting enough sleep, and I didn't see that I was taking on something that was really, really hard. I thought that I was like super mom, like a robot. So being up with kids all day, being up with babies all night, my husband going to work in the nighttime, being asleep in the daytime, not having all that help, that took a toll. And eventually, once my period started coming back, I started noticing a shift in my mood. I started feeling different. And that's what I would say was when anxiety hit. Now, it wasn't depression, and I will be specific, it was anxiety. And I remember telling myself, I am glad it's just anxiety, but it was terrible. Now, when I say anxiety, I was having physical symptoms of anxiety that many of you moms can relate to. For example, heart palpitations, feeling your heart beating out of your chest, the feeling of not being able to catch a full breath, feeling like you're suffocating, sweating, dizziness, feeling like you're going to faint or you're going to pass out. Symptoms that were out of my control. They were so physical that it was like a cycle every time they would be brought on. And I didn't know when those feelings were going to come on. Sometimes they were in the daytime during lunch. Sometimes they were right after breakfast. And a lot of times they were in the middle of the night. I would wake up out of my sleep. My heart rate would be in the 130s for absolutely no reason. I would be thinking that I was having a heart attack or that something was going to happen to me. And it was just the feeling of a medical emergency and that I needed help. I had contacted the ambulance twice because of the fact that I was so afraid. And mind you, I was at home with my kids by myself. So I had to ask my mom to come and watch the kids. And I had to call the ambulance and go to the hospital and get all these tests done because I just was convincing myself that there was something physically wrong with me, that I was not going to be here for my kids. And I was just so afraid of something happening to me and leaving them alone. And this cycle just kept going and going and going. And I would constantly check my physical symptoms. I would constantly check my heart rate. I would check my oxygen levels. I had my blood pressure tool. I would check my blood pressure constantly, which, mind you, my blood pressure was normal. But in my mind, it was not the normal that I was used to. It was like the 120s over 80s, and I was used to like those low 90s over 60s. So in my mind, I kept on putting these diseases on myself. Like, what if it's heart failure? What if I have asthma? What if there's something wrong with my lungs? What if I have just all these horrible illnesses would just come to my mind. And the thought and idea of leaving my family and leaving my husband and my children were consuming me every single day. And I think that anxiety for a postpartum mom stems around the issue of leaving your babies and not being here for your babies. And I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling. Some of the postpartum that I used to experience when I had my other children were more of, what if something happens to the baby? What if the baby starts breathing while she's asleep or he's asleep? And you're constantly checking on your baby. But this scenario was different, where it was more like, what's wrong with me? What's going on? Why is my heart beating so fast? And it was just a constant cycle. I was chasing my tail. And I am a nutrition major, so I was doing everything in my power to try to eat right. And I was trying to eat, but at the same time, I had no appetite. When you're going through anxiety, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you also can relate on this, where you just lose your appetite, you don't really want to eat, there's nothing that you're craving. You can put any food in front of me, but I was just not hungry. I was very nauseated. And a lot of times I had to force myself to eat because I knew my blood sugar was low. But at the end of the day, I will say that I didn't know what was causing my anxiety. I didn't know why it was being brought on. It would just happen in these spontaneous moments. And I was in such a blur that I couldn't pinpoint that, which is very important because that will also be a topic in my recovery video. So the first part of this is that I did go through anxiety first. And it did happen when I started getting my menstrual cycles. And once I got my menstrual cycles, I started seeing this shift. I was getting migraines. I was getting a lot of nausea. My periods were actually much heavier than I've ever had experienced. So I'm going through this shift in hormones, which probably played a huge role in this anxiety that I was feeling, that was playing mind games with me. And when you are not eating right and then you're not sleeping right, it's just a combination of things that will throw you over the edge. And I will say that during this period, my husband's working. Everybody around me doesn't really know what I'm going through. I'm not really talking much to anybody about it. I'm kind of internalizing it, and the only person I'm going through is my husband. My husband is just constantly getting these calls on him, or he's constantly being awoken like, I need help, I'm scared, I don't know what's wrong with me. So this is beginning to take a toll on our marriage. And my children are also seeing my distress, which was even more concerning for me because it was very hard for me to be able to contain the emotions that I was going through. Um, I would give you an example. When I was going through these panic attacks, I would immediately have to walk outside, and I would have to tell my oldest, please watch the babies or just sit there, because my husband would be asleep. And I would have to go outside and get some fresh air, and I'd have to walk around and just move just to wait for it to pass because I didn't know when it would pass. And it was terrifying for me, and it was a very, very lonely experience because nobody can understand what you're going through. Nobody knows what you're feeling, and they're just onlookers, and they're looking, and they don't understand why you're feeling like that. And then on top of everything, you're going to the doctors and you're asking for answers, and they're telling you your blood tests are fine, there's nothing wrong with you, I think that you need to go see a psychiatrist, and I think it's all in your head. So you just feel so unvalidated, and I guess you just feel lost and alone. And I really, really want to emphasize that during this period, I felt like I was in a hole that nobody could get me out of. And I felt like I was just trying to seek for answers of why I was going through this, and I was not finding them. And I'm asking for help from doctors, from family members, like, have you been through this? Is this normal? And I'm trying to find this reassurance that I couldn't get, and I didn't understand what I was going through. My husband didn't understand what I was going through. He did not know what to do. He had to go to work to provide, and he couldn't figure out this problem, which was more frustrating for him. And I would say, in hindsight, looking back, I think that if I would go back and go through this experience again, I would definitely seek help from others during that time. And not really to seek help in a sense for, I would say, to seek help for the children, because when you're going through this, it's hard to take care of yourself and to take care of other people. So having that support system was so critical for those moments for myself. And I didn't ask, and I didn't reach out for somebody to come and help me during that time. And I really wish that I would, because had I had somebody there while I was going through these panic attacks, it would have helped me get through them a lot faster, and it would have helped the process, and it would have sped up the process, because you're not able to get out of a stressful emotional situation when you have chaos going on around you. And having babies and having toddlers and having kids, there's a lot of loud noises, there's chaos, and everybody needs you, everybody needs something's always going on, which made it worse for me to heal at the time, and to realize what I was going through. So if that's a really important point that I want to make, is that if you are going through panic attacks, if you are going through anxiety, I believe that it's so important to get that person to come and watch the kids, just so that you can go to a room, seclude yourself, and just get that time for yourself to come back, to get that mindfulness, for you to just breathe and relax, and then come back out when you're ready, because it's very hard to do that when you have little ones. So I will stop right here and just say that, so this is the beginning part of my story. The next part will be about the, how would you say, the depression, which came on after the anxiety, and which was so debilitating. So This first part is just a background of my experience with my birth and the trauma that I went through and the anxiety and the shift in hormones that can happen. The second part will be about the postpartum depression and the severe symptoms that can happen to some women, which happened to me. And then the third part will be about my recovery and how I'm doing now. So I hope that you can join me for that second part. I'm very excited to share with you this series because I really want to reach moms that are going through this. I have such a heart for postpartum moms. This is a journey that should not be done alone. This is a journey where we need to support each other and we need to be there and share our stories. To give hope and light that everything will be okay and you will get through it and you will get out through the other side. So please join me for the second part. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down. And I hope to see you guys again for the second part.